Hello and welcome back to the Frogs of War podcast. I'm Anthony North. That's Russ Hodges. We are back to talk all things TCU sports. Coming off a big away win in Austin, 17-10 over the Texas Longhorns. Basketball had an up and down disappointing week. And soccer, volleyball, other things happening. But Russ, how are you doing today?
Doing good. We got some snow rolling through the Chicagoland area, one of our first snows of the year, and I'm feeling pretty good. Had a busy week and excited to talk about this football. And regrettably, we have to talk about some basketball stuff, but we'll look to find some positives there. And going to give TCU Volleyball a little bit of love, too, for a big win against Baylor and just beating West Virginia about an hour or so ago. So some exciting things happening with the volleyball program as well.
Absolutely. Well-deserved praise all around TCU athletics, save for the men's basketball team. We'll get into that. But the big news of the week, TCU football taking down Texas Longhorns in front of the second most people ever to catch a Longhorn game at Darrell K. Royal Stadium. Sent them all, or the ones who were clad in burnt orange, home unhappy. Texas came into the game as a large favorite, 7 to 7.5 point favorite. TCU controlled the game defensively and was able to keep all of those superstars on the Texas offense completely at bay. It was a great night in Austin for the Horned Frogs. Put on a good show, I think, winning in a different way than had won so far this season. Had not had a defensive performance like that really in a long, long time. That was quite impressive. What stood out to you, Russ?
Yeah, I think the defense absolutely stood out. I mean, this was bar none the best defensive performance of the season, coming off a pretty solid effort against Texas Tech. And it was a collective effort, too. I think that's what was really exciting. And in a battle of Big 12 supremacy at the running back position, Bijan Robinson and Kendre Miller, who's better? Bijan Robinson held to 29 yards in this game on 12 carries. I believe it was his season low in terms of rushing yards. 2.4 yards a carry, did not have a rushing touchdown for the first time in a few weeks. This was his lowest total, I believe, rushing since the Alabama game. And Roschon Johnson didn't fare much better either, only 14 yards on 5 carries. So it was the big boys up front who really showed out in this game. When you look at 33 of the 47 tackles made by TCU's defense were made by guys at those front 6 positions. Timon Mitchell and Dylan Horton both made some sacks. Shad Banks had that huge 4th down stop, of course, playing for D. Winters, who missed the first half after that targeting foul last week. And Johnny Hodges. I mean, you talk about a player stepping up and becoming a leader when one of your key players is out. Had 11 total tackles in this game. Was the best player on the field defensively, and he was the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Week, and rightfully so. But in the secondary, too, I mean, Quinn Ewers has struggled a little bit over these last couple of games, but I was not impressed by what I saw from him at all. I mean, he completed just under 44% of his passes, threw a deep ball in the double coverage that Travius Hodges-Tomlinson picked off. He had an interception for the second straight game. Also had multiple pass breakups. Bud Clark at the free safety spot had 2 pass breakups. I believe defensively, in total, 7 passes defensed in this game, 6 tackles for loss. Just you couldn't have asked for a better effort defensively. And getting 4th down and 3rd down stops was huge as well. Texas was 1 of 13 on 3rd down in this game.
Amazing.
1 of 4 on 4th down. So the Frogs putting the clamps down defensively when, like you mentioned, the offense uncharacteristically struggled. And I guess we'll kind of talk a little bit about the offense right now. Anthony, what did you think about just the way things kind of transpired and how the Frogs were able to find something on that end down the stretch?
Yeah, I mean, certainly the first half, big struggles for that offensive unit. The offensive line was, again, kind of getting dominated. The Texas D-line was, we talked about it coming into the game. There's up and down that line, big-time playmakers, and they were certainly putting Max in bad positions and forcing I think TCU had 3 drives that went for the complete drive was negative yardage, 3 and outs that included a sack, or a negative pass that, was never going to be able to recover and get anything going offensively. The offensive game plan in the first half also seemed to really rely on horizontal plays, whether long developing run plays or that wide receiver screen that we see so often to Tay Barber or Darius Davis, that the speed of the Longhorn defense was making that kind of completely useless for the TCU offense. So first half, really poor job. And really, I don't know if it's necessarily a poor job or really that Texas defense was living up to its hype, where the Texas offense was not living up to its hype in the first half. But, obviously then it comes down to the big plays. So second half comes around and Kendre Miller breaks one, and huge block up the field by Savion Williams there, that turns maybe a 9-yard gain into a 75-yard touchdown to break the game open. And then the Quentin Johnston touchdown, a thing of beauty. The Longhorns brought the blitz there, heavy blitz. Kendre Miller picked up a massive block on that one that gave Duggan just enough time to lift it up there to QJ for the score that proved to be the game winner. So, I think there's a lot of room for improvement. I think that the disappointing thing in the first half was TCU kept getting these excellent field positions where, on the good side of midfield or just past midfield, and whether it was stopping Texas on those 4th down attempts or, tough punts or the turnovers, TCU had opportunities in the scoring zone that couldn't convert into points. Just the one field goal, the other field goal attempt that's blocked from Griffin Kell. So unfortunate missed opportunities there, but certainly capitalized enough in the second half and the defense made it so it didn't end up mattering so much in the end.
Yeah, in the first half, Max was kind of under siege. It was like negative play after negative play after negative play. He sacked 5 times in the game, and there were many scenarios where Texas was just putting 6 guys up right on the line of scrimmage, not even faking a drop back, just coming right after him. And I think, later on in the game, TCU started keeping a running back to try and protect and shore up that blocking up front. And you had mentioned that Kendre Miller stood in and helped set a block to give Max a little more time to hit Quentin Johnston on that touchdown. But the pressure early on from Texas really was overwhelming for this TCU offensive line. The protection was really in disarray. But also, I think you also brought up the quick passing game, those horizontal throws out to the perimeter. Darius Davis finished this game with 4 catches, I believe, for negative 6 yards. And that's something and they tried to get him on a jet sweep, like one of those little touch passes that has been successful earlier on in the season, and it just wasn't there. These are things that, weren't there in this game, seemingly haven't been there in the last couple of games, but offensively, your star players showed up when they had to. It was great to see Quentin Johnston out there. No doubts about that ankle. He looked pretty good to me. He had only 3 catches for 66 yards and a score, but each of those catches were big time. One of them is the touchdown. The other is the quick slant to pick up a first down and effectively seal the game there. on a play where if Max waits another half second, he's probably getting dropped. And then his first catch was a big first down and a long gain as well. So really happy to see that. Kendre Miller, ho-hum, another 100-plus yard rushing effort. And, the Frogs are really leaning on this run game right now. This is back-to-back games with 20-plus carries for Kendre Miller, 10-plus carries for Amari DiMercato, who had 65 yards and had some really big runs in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Given the Texas defense the little boy treatment down the stretch there to help seal the win. But, one last thing I kind of want to bring up and get your thoughts on is just the near catastrophic meltdown at the end of the game when it's 17-3 and the Frogs have the ball. You think the game is all but over at this point, and then it looks like there was a miscommunication on the read option. Max winds up dropping the ball, tries to fall on it, can't fall on it, turns into a scoop and score, and all of a sudden it's a one-possession game. And if Texas is somehow able to get a stop, then they have the ball back with a chance to potentially tie it. And I was just kind of surrender Cobraing in that moment. I can't remember the last time I saw something like that from this offense or from Max. What was kind of going through your mind in that moment?
It was frightening. I think I tweeted, "I'm going to vomit." I was very nervous about it. And like you said, we haven't seen that this season, and it's the thing of like, is this that moment that everybody all over the country has been waiting for TCU to have that moment of failure? Is this going to be that moment? I mean, like Kirk Herbstreit was talking about the Big 12 championship game and who TCU's matchup is going to be with, and what they're going to look like in the playoff ranking. And it was kind of like just don't count it until it's there. It's not over until that scoreboard shows 0-0. So I was worried about it, but it mostly, I think what was concerning was all of these. It felt like TCU had already run away with this game, and you give this glimmer of opportunity to Texas to come back and eventually maybe tie and win the game. You don't want to give a team like Texas any glimmer of hope. You want to break their will and them to, all 104,000 of them to shovel off out of the stadium before, in that final 4 minutes. And to then kind of light that spark, it could have become a burning inferno of, Texas opportunity that, to the Horned Frogs' credit, they just strapped it right back on and went out there and grinded out the first downs necessary to run the clock out. It really, maybe that's the most impressive drive of the game, actually, is coming back right after that terrible scoop and score to pick up those first downs. You mentioned the DiMercato plays and the Quentin Johnston. The cojones to run that play there, to call a pass play, a play that had not worked earlier, that, Johnston makes the catch and that more or less seals the game. I think you don't want to give. I would have been really worried if TCU had to punt away there and give that offense an opportunity, even though they had done nothing all day. I think Sanders had a few drops. Worthy had a few drops. If they have a little drive late in the game where they don't have those drops, obviously it all worked out fine in the end, but huge credit to Doug into coming back out there and that offense just, putting it right, water under the bridge and grinding out those final minutes.
Yeah, the pigskin might have been a little slippery in general in this game because there were quite a few drops by guys on both sides that were pretty uncharacteristic.
Yeah, and even Quinn Ewers had a similar fumble. They were down like inside the 10 or something where he just kind of dropped the ball, and lucky enough it bounced right back up to him before Shad Banks could get there. But yeah, I think maybe that's nerves, maybe that's something going on there, but a lot of drops around, particularly on the Texas side. I think that's some people will point to that as, oh, TCU got lucky because Jatavius Sanders had all those drops. And like, okay, well, that's not if just catch the ball then. I don't know. But I guess what does it mean to TCU for this season for, we can talk about the Gary Patterson of it all as well. To go in there and with, pretty much unanimous across the country, all nationwide commentators saying that TCU was not going to win this game, and go there and really more or less dominate, even if the scoreboard came down to a one-score victory.
Yeah, I think given what the stakes were, we didn't even talk about that Texas was a 7-point favorite, I believe, coming into this game, and with 104,000 plus fans at the stadium looking to have an opportunity to get riled up there at the end of the game after that scoop and score for TCU to be able to buckle down at the end of the game. And it's a great win. I think no matter how you slice it up, it's a great win against a ranked team on the road. Anytime I think you can beat a ranked team on the road, it means a lot for your program. And unfortunately, the narrative that's dominating the national airwaves right now is just that the Frogs are hanging on, and the Frogs are going to be on upset alert. Down there already talking about the Frogs being on upset alert against Baylor. I think Paul Feinbaum and Stephen A. Smith is saying that TCU may not be better than Tennessee, and we could ramble on and on about this. I know I could, because it grinds my gears quite a bit. But the reality is, I think if the Frogs just continue to come out and play fundamentally sound football and limit the self-inflicted mistakes, they're going to be in a position to win games regardless of how many points they're winning by. And when she's all said and done, when you're 13-0 and a conference champion, a berth in the college football playoff is going to await you. So we have a short stretch between now and then, and really interested to see how the Frogs finish down the stretch here, because it seems like, the season started, the offense was so explosive, and as the season has kind of gone on, the defense has seemingly gained more confidence. You see guys making really good tackles in space, playing good coverage, generating a little bit of pressure up front. But the offense in the passing game is, starting to kind of sputter a little bit. So would really like to see that passing game get back on track as the Frogs get ready for Baylor, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But collectively, it's a good win for TCU, and 8-3, I believe, now against the Longhorns since entering the Big 12. Frogs might be big brother. Might be big brother. Just gonna float that out there.
Yeah. That's what everyone forgot about, is that TCU just owns Texas. It doesn't matter who's out there on the field. It doesn't matter. That's just the way it is.
College game day too. We didn't talk about that.
Yeah,
it's college game day, and look at the Frogs' track record on college game day. I mean, they're showing up when.
What's that make it now? 8-1, I think. 8-1 in all college game day games, and the only loss is it wasn't even a campus game day game. So yeah, I think there's just some magic out there floating in the air. Yeah. One of the other things that kind of leading into the game that people were talking about was how Arch Manning was going to be there, big, the next greatest of all time recruits after Quinn Ewers was the greatest of all time quarterback recruits. And, he was going to see the show that the Longhorns put on. And obviously they didn't put on that show, but maybe he's watching this game thinking he can step right in as a true freshman and take that job. I mean, I don't think really Ewers has shown anything this season to suggest that his long-term viability as the starting quarterback for the Longhorns is really safe.
Yeah, it's interesting because, I mean, Quinn Ewers kind of lit the college football scene on fire with his first half performance against Alabama. And after that game, the whole narrative was, but if Quinn doesn't get hurt, we have a chance to win the game. But you look at his numbers, I mean, over the last 3 weeks, he's completed fewer than 50% of his passes in 2 of his last 3 games. Really, really struggled against Oklahoma State. Really, really struggled in this game. I don't know if he's, like, not 100%, but
could be.
Is it just me? I felt like I was watching him throw the ball, and it's just like, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of zip on the ball to me. Like, it seems like he is kind of trying to place the ball in certain spots as opposed to trying to get it there, if you know what I mean. It feels like a lot of his throws are just kind of, I don't want to use the word lazy because I don't think that's the right word, but it's just, he doesn't really drive the football.
Doesn't have the pop. Doesn't have that.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that makes me wonder, like, okay, is there something going on there? But I think he's a better player than what we've seen over the last couple of weeks, and perhaps it's just a credit to a great all-around defensive effort, like we discussed before. But Arch Manning might have been licking his chops watching that performance and thinking, oh man, this might be my job next year. I don't know. We'll see how Quinn Ewers responds over these next couple of games, because Texas is still in the running for a spot in Arlington. Who knows?
Still have that opportunity. One other thing I want to kind of get your thought on before we close out the Texas game is Max Duggan as a runner. We've now seen four straight games where he's got under 15 yards rushing. Obviously, this game, way under at negative 41 total yards, given the sheer number of sacks and the yardage lost on those sacks.
Michael Scott cringe gif.
Yeah, it's rough. But do we think the offense has moved away from him as a runner, or that's just not how the game plan has worked? Or are we expecting to see Max break out those wheels again down the line?
Yeah, it really seems like he has become more of a pocket passer in this scheme. The rush attempts have been pretty high over the last few games, but that's often because he's been getting sacked, and that's just how the stats work in college football. Like in the Texas game, 10 rush attempts for negative 41 yards. That is also a symptom of being sacked 5 times. But also I think it's a combination of factors. Max over his last couple games has thrown for under 200 yards. His completion percentage is down over the last 3 games, down to just under 59%. I'm not sure if maybe he might be a little banged up, potentially nursing some kind of an injury. Maybe he doesn't want to leave the pocket. Maybe he doesn't want to take a hit. That's not any kind of like assertion to question his toughness or anything like that, because that would be absolutely asinine with what he's given to the program. But it definitely feels like, with the way Kendre Miller and Amari DiMercato have taken on a very healthy workload, they haven't really used him as a runner, and it doesn't really seem like that's the game plan. It seems like a lot of these throws that Max is looking for down the field, 15, 20 yards plus down the field, they take time to develop. And I think what we've seen over these last couple of games is, Teams are looking for the quick action on early downs. They're looking for the passes out to the perimeter. They're looking for the jet sweeps. They're looking to stop the run on early downs. And if they're successful in doing that, then they're going to pin their ears back and bring the pressure in later downs, because I feel like they know Max's tendencies, and we've talked about these on the podcast. He doesn't like to throw the ball away. He doesn't often check down to his running back. And when there have been opportunities, especially in the Texas Tech game, to escape the pocket and scramble, pick up some yards, he just doesn't want to do it. He's keeping his eyes downfield, looking for throws that just aren't there. So I think, it's a combination of, I think there are going to be some adjustments made from the standpoint of Garrett Riley, the offensive coordinator, to get some action maybe out of the backfield, or a little bit more vertical, some more vertical concepts as opposed to everything going from side to side. That might be an adjustment to kind of offset those blitzes that TCU has seen so many of over the last couple of games. But I also think that Max has got to be willing to scramble a little bit and or throw the ball away. It's even if you're only able to pick up 5 yards on a 3rd and 8, and you have to
or not lose
away.
8 yards on first down.
Right,
yeah.
And throwing the ball away is not the worst thing in the world. Live to fight another down. Bring the punter out. Trust that your defense can get a stop and get you the ball back. Or try to maybe find some kind of positive gain. Taking a sack does nobody no good. And it seems like you can basically guarantee once a game Max is going to take a sack that he shouldn't. At the end of the day, a lot of this is easier said than done. These are just my observations. I think some adjustments need to be made schematically. I think Max as a quarterback needs to be better in certain scenarios. I'm not sure if maybe there might be some dings there, but we'll see how the offense responds, and we'll see if this passing game, which again under 200 passing yards each of the last 2 games, can get back on track against Baylor.
Yeah, and it's picking nits a lot here, because we're talking about a team that's 10-0, and Max has led them and certainly done everything necessary to obtain those wins. So we're looking ahead to, all right, we got to win these last 3 and then hit the playoff and see what happens. And you did mention, though, the pass game to the running backs. Have to shout out the Kendre Miller, again, getting a screen pass to get 10 yards. His one catch of the game went for 10 yards, and it was a rumbling, bumbling, thing of beauty.
About 4 tackles, I think, on that play. I thought that play was dead to rights. I thought that
3
was
or 4
drop
times.
no
Yeah.
gains. Yep.
And he made it happen to get that first down, a big play. Also have to shout out Jordy Sandy, the punter, who had good punts through the night, and Texas was really sending heat at him. Clearly they saw something on film that showed maybe a vulnerability to allowing a blocked punt. The Longhorns got to him early and it wasn't called, then got to him later, and it was to give TCU a first down there that ended up leading. I think that was the drive that turned into the Quentin Johnston touchdown. So ends up being a big play where instead of punting away, giving the ball back to the Texas offense, you continue forward on a drive, eating more clock and scoring. So a big moment in the game. I know a lot of the Texas people online have just really nasty responses to him. That's been disgusting and gross. But even just the ones publicly, people are, they're thinking he didn't actually get hit or whatever. But, I think he did. And whether it's roughing or running into on that play, it was like 4th and 3. It wouldn't have mattered. It would have been a first down either way. And, you know, when you play with fire like that as a team rushing a punter, you know, if you're not careful, you get burned and you get that penalty. It's the risk you're taking by making that all out punt block call.
Yeah, you know, special teams has continued to be a strong area for the Frogs throughout this season. Even that first field goal attempt, you know, it's partially blocked. I think that snapped a streak of 8 consecutive makes, but bouncing right back, Griffin Kell hitting that field goal, and was not expecting 3-0 at halftime. I would love to meet the man who had that prediction at halftime. But yeah, I think on that play, you look at it in slow-mo, and I think there were some Texas fans who were upset thinking that, oh, it might have been a flop. But like you said, when you're bringing that much pressure and you land anywhere close to the punter, and I believe the rule might be you have to give the punter.
He has to have a landing zone.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, you know, kind of like the Max face mask, no face mask, where it looks bad at first glance. When you slow it down, it doesn't look as bad, but I think it was the right call in this game. And you know, when you get breaks in football sometimes, and when you get those breaks, you take advantage of them, and that's what the Frogs did.
So with the win, the committee moved the Horned Frogs exactly nowhere. TCU remained at number 4 in the college football playoff ranking that came out late Tuesday. Not a surprise there. Obviously, Georgia, Ohio State, and Michigan all won in pretty easy fashion. So to keep it that way, did get losses from Oregon and UCLA to shake things up in the Pac-12 a little bit and kind of more or less eliminate them as contenders to overtake TCU at any time. USC is still lurking down there, and then, of course, Tennessee, LSU, Clemson, maybe North Carolina even hanging out down there. But not a huge shakeup. I think this did, though, speak to TCU keeps kind of knocking away anything that detractors can say bad about them. So, you know, the last couple weeks it's been, well, they're not a balanced team. They're not equally good on defense as they are on offense. Yes, they're explosive, but they can't stop anybody. They have to, they're getting to play backup quarterbacks. You know, all of that, you know, coming into this game, I heard, you know, national media people talking about Bijan Robinson could still be in the Heisman race. Bijan Robinson is the best running back in all of college football. Bijan Robinson is going to be a top 5 draft pick. Yeah, he was just held under 30 yards in a college football game. I mean, and that's silencing those doubters one by one. There's a lot of doubters out there, so it's going to take all season to silence them all. But, you know, it's good to see the Frogs continue to take these steps.
Yeah, and it's one of those situations where it's tough as a fan base to be, I guess, resigned to the fact that TCU as a smaller school and a smaller label, I guess you can say, is going to have to continuously give committee members or people on the national stage reasons to believe that they are legit. When in reality, I think if you stripped everything away, you stripped the colors and the logos and everything away, and just look purely at what has been done on paper, 5 wins over ranked teams, 2 wins over ranked teams on the road. By ESPN's own metrics, the number 1 strength of schedule in all of college football. 10-0 team in a Power 5 conference. I believe 7 wins or 8 wins against teams with records of 500 or better. The resume speaks for itself. If it were Texas or Oklahoma with that resume, would they still be stuck at number 4? I don't think so. If it was Clemson with that resume, would they still be stuck at number 4? I don't think so. But you kind of find yourself running down a rabbit hole, I guess, when you continue to bring up those kinds of hypotheticals. But I think it's a harsh reality, I guess, and it's tough as a fan base and as a member of the fan base to swallow that it's going to be what seems like an eternal fight for national respect. But I think that's
part of the beauty of being TCU fans. That's kind of what it's all about. Is like, all right, you're gonna doubt us, and we're gonna go show you why you're wrong. And I think that's part of the fun of it.
Yep. And what's even more fun, to be honest, is with Texas and Oklahoma obviously leaving soon for the SEC. You got UCF cracking the top 25. Cincinnati's
back.
Got into the top 25.
Mm-hmm.
So you're still going to have some really competitive football being played in the foreseeable future. And for TCU, I mean, you look at the Big 12's future with no Texas or no Oklahoma, who is frequently third behind those two schools in recruiting, who is usually right up there or higher than those two schools in terms of endowment. It'd be the Frogs. So TCU really has an opportunity with this season and moving forward to really expand the brand that is being built. And I'm really excited to see, even after, regardless of how this season unfolds, just the way the program and the way the brand is viewed and perceived as we move into the future.
The future for the Frogs is exciting. Anything else we need to touch on last week before we move forward to Baylor?
You know what? I think we just about covered everything. Just looking at some quick scores around the Big 12, Kansas State in another big game. Kansas State and Baylor, I believe, were playing at about the same time. The Frogs were playing Texas in a game that two teams vying for that second spot now in the Big 12 championship game. Kansas State once again calls Will Howard out of the bullpen, and he throws 100-mile-an-hour heaters all game long, throws for 3 touchdowns, and Baylor gets stomped 31-3. So Kansas State now is kind of in that driver's seat as the number 2 team in the conference standings. Even though they're 2 games behind the Frogs, they have a game lead on 3 teams now with 3 losses in Texas, Oklahoma State, and Baylor, and there are a variety of tiebreaker scenarios, but Oklahoma State helped its own cause out with a 20-14 win against Iowa State in a game where Gunnar Gundy, the son of Mike Gundy, actually started the game. Spencer Rattler and Garrett Rangel were both viewed as doubtful for this game, and Spencer Sanders actually came back in the second half and threw a touchdown and led them to a win. Texas Tech gets a big win against Kansas, 43-28. I believe they ran for 4 touchdowns in that game. So typical high-scoring Texas Tech, uncharacteristically doing it on the ground as opposed to through the air. And then for the second time this season, West Virginia playing spoiler. Obviously, they beat Baylor on a walk-off field goal earlier this season. Their kicker, ironically, his last name is Casey Legg, with 2 G's, using his leg with 1 G to boot a game-winning field goal again against Oklahoma. West Virginia wins that game 23-20. Garrett Green came on in relief of JT Daniels, who played like poop and got benched, and Garrett Green came in and really brought the Mountaineers back in that game. Dylan Gabriel was not very impressive for the Sooners. Eric Gray carried the load, ran for 211 yards in that game, and I can't remember a time where Bedlam was this irrelevant. Oklahoma State has clinched a bowl berth. Oklahoma's 5-5 and trying to get one, but you would think coming into the season that this would be a game with Big 12 championship or even college football playoff ramifications. And now for Oklahoma, it's please don't let us finish 6-6. Don't let us finish 5-7.
Yeah, the Sooners just struggling to get to bowl eligibility. And the Cowboys, though, that win, even if it's not super impressive over Iowa State, did put them back up into the playoff top 25, up into number 22, I think. So yes, TCU has 2 wins over current top 25 in the playoff rankings with the Kansas State and Oklahoma State. Texas did fall out of the rankings, but I'd probably expect to see them back in at some point if they win out. Yeah, Texas is always back.
8-4. You know it. It's not even a question.
Most definitely. So I think you noted that the Kansas State game was at the same time as TCU, so I didn't get to see too much of it. But going back and reading the stories and watching the highlights, man, they're looking scary. And the Will Howard of it all is, I think, he's probably their better quarterback, and he certainly played very strong against the Frogs, and that's a scary team to play in the conference championship game. They are no joke, no pushover, and have been, certainly were one of the toughest games for TCU this season. So we'll see how that all shakes out and who will be facing the Frogs in Arlington. Still a couple games before that. So this week, coming up Saturday, 11 a.m., Waco, Texas, broadcast on Big Fox. TCU against Baylor. It's the rivalry. It's all the hatred, all the vitriol, all the things you can say bad about an opponent and a fan base. You say it about Baylor. I say that jokingly. I mean, I think some of the hatred of this rivalry certainly has gone by the wayside with no Gary Patterson, no Art Briles, but the play on the field has been fierce of late, as always. And last season TCU more or less eliminated Baylor from playoff contention with its win in Fort Worth, and now Baylor has its opportunity at revenge. So we'll see how that plays out. Watching the Bears this season, I think it's certainly been a disappointment. Projected to win or come in second in the Big 12 conference going into the season. There was a lot of hype around the Bears, and the move from Gary Bohannon to Blake Shapen was pretty roundly thought of as the right thing to do, and Dave Aranda was pretty well praised for making that call early and allowing Bohannon to move on to USF. I think Shapen's been fine, and I don't know that Bohannon would have really been too much better. Maybe he, comes in if he's the backup in that West Virginia game and they survive there. But this is a team that's really won with its defense, won with its running game. That Squirrel Williams, Richard Reese have been really strong in a lot of games this season. Something that TCU will need to be able to stop. The marketplace is showing this as a projected tight game. 2.5 point favorite. The Frogs are going into Waco. It's gonna be a tough one. It's gonna be another dogfight in a tough environment. How are you feeling about the Frogs going into Waco this weekend?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a Baylor team coming in that still theoretically has a chance to qualify for the Big 12 championship and is going to be absolutely looking to exact some revenge on the Frogs after what happened in Fort Worth last year, where Chandler Morris goes to the moon and back for, I believe, over 500 yards of total offense, and Shad Banks secures that game-winning interception to ruin Baylor's season effectively. And I feel like the Frogs have kind of had the upper hand in recent years against Baylor, but there have been some competitive games. And offensively, Blake Shapen has kind of struggled in these last few games. He's had consecutive games without a touchdown, 3 interceptions over his last 2 games. And you brought up how Baylor was kind of viewed at the start of the season. I felt like they were going to be really young on the offensive side because they lost quite a bit of skill talent. Obviously, Ben Sims was coming back. Drake Dabney, who they, I believe, lost for the season with an injury earlier this year. That was a pretty significant hit there for them. But they were going to need to grow up pretty fast at those skill positions and lean on that defense, which has kind of come and gone seemingly as the year has progressed. But ultimately, this is a scenario where Baylor has to win out to have a chance of playing in the Big 12 championship. So bowl eligibility already secured, but it's going to be, like you said, it's going to be a dogfight. And I'm curious to see how Baylor's rushing game fares against this TCU defense that just dominated against Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson, who I think are better running backs than what Baylor will deploy. But we brought it up last week. It doesn't really seem to matter who Baylor lines up back there. We've seen Richard Reese go off for 30-plus carries for well over 100 yards. Craig Williams has done it as well. So I expect, I guess, kind of a similar game plan defensively, where these guys in the front 6 are going to be challenged with stopping that run and forcing a quarterback in Blake Shapen that has struggled to throw the ball in recent games to beat them throwing the ball. So that's what I look for from TCU defensively in this game.
Yeah, one thing I was looking up that interested me and I was really surprised in looking up on this Baylor team, their Football Outsiders defensive line and offensive line splits. They have some advanced stats on a lot of different things on the offensive and defensive line, but the Bears' offensive line is extremely strong, showing as one of the top in the country at a lot of different categories, which certainly contributes to allowing any kind of running back to do what they want and giving Shapen time to make plays and not surrendering sacks. Let's see, they're top 15 in sack rate, top 15 in stuff rate, top 15 in line yards. So really strong on the offensive line, and will certainly be a challenge for that TCU defense to try to handle. On the flip side, I think we kind of think of Baylor as really being strong up front, but their stats on Football Outsiders have them this season really poor in a lot of those metrics, particularly, let's see, number 126 in power success rate. So meaning if it's third, fourth, and short, they're allowing that first down, which is something that we know TCU is also capable of taking advantage of from the offensive side. So I think maybe a goal for the Frogs offense here will be to keep themselves ahead of the chains to where you're setting up relatively short late downs to where you're able to just pick it up and keep the chains moving, rather than trying to really toss it all over the field on them, which, Baylor has been a little bit susceptible to as well. But I don't know that that's probably the best way for TCU to, I don't want to say escape with a win, but all of these at this point is just get out of Waco, get a win, and move on to the season finale with Iowa State. So I think that may be an opportunity here. Let's see a lot of Kendre Miller, a lot of DeMarcado, and let's get Max Duggan's rushing game going again and get his confidence back on that aspect.
Yeah, and I think that's a good segue into what I'm looking to see offensively from TCU is I want to see this passing game get back on track. Obviously, the Frogs have run the ball seemingly whenever they've wanted, but I think it's important to continue to have that balance offensively, and so a lot of those big plays and chunk gains down the field that we have seen throughout the season just haven't been there over the last couple of games. And so I'm curious to see how the Frogs come out offensively if they continue to be a run first, ball control. If you want to call it conservative, sure. But I would personally, I'd like to see some adjustments with the game plan. I feel like Baylor is going to look at the film and what Texas Tech and Texas did over the last couple of weeks and potentially come to the realization that, all right, if we can get a stop on early downs and contain that quick passing game to the outside and the zone reads and get TCU into some predictable passing situations, we're sending some guys. We're sending 5, 6, maybe 7 guys, and we're not going to let those plays develop down the field, and we're going to take advantage of one of Max's, shall I say, weaknesses, which is just that pocket presence that seems to just kind of leave him at times. So could we see some more action out of the backfield in the passing game? Potentially. Could we see some more RPO? Maybe you fake the zone read and find a tight end or a receiver over the middle and just try to get some more routes going vertically in short yardage and not necessarily horizontally, where guys earlier in the year were being able to get out in space, whereas as the season has progressed, I think teams have started to adjust and they're able to fly to the football more and they're able to get off of those blocks on the perimeter better. So really curious to see how the Frogs come out in this game offensively, and I think they're going to make the right adjustments. And for Max, who has been slumping a little bit over these last few games, as I mentioned before, I think he's going to bounce back and have a really good game against the Bears.
Awesome. So let's jump into our predictions for this game, final scores and whatnot. So with TCU as a 2.5-point favorite, total on the game is a 58. I've got it relatively close, but TCU covering 30-24. So under the spread, defensive struggle, and TCU comes away with just a 6-point victory. But like I said, anything you get out of Waco with the win is going to be gravy in my mind. And I think they grind out a win. We continue to hear whatever narrative from Stephen A. Smith, who's probably not watched a single college football game all season. He can shut it. Everybody else can shut it. We just keep on winning.
Yeah, I'm going TCU 41, Baylor 20. I think this is an opportunity potentially, and I hate to bring up the idea of style points and winning pretty, but you look at how Michigan and Ohio State beat up on mediocre football programs by 20 and 30 points. I'm not saying
that's
Baylor's
generous. Mediocre, that's generous. Yeah.
I'm not saying Baylor's a mediocre team, but I feel like the Frogs, just to kind of get that to silence the national media pundits a little bit. Let's get a big time win against a quality opponent where it's not a 3-point or 7-point or even a 10-point spread. And I like the Frogs to be a little more explosive offensively in this game. Like I said, I think they're going to make the right adjustments. I think Max is going to have a bounce back game, and I think the defense is going to continue to build on what they've done over these last few games and come out with a really good showing here. It seems like the defense is getting healthier, Millard Bradford is back and seemingly getting healthier and healthier at that nickel position. Bud Clark had a really nice game against the Longhorns. He looks like he's getting healthier and healthier at that free safety spot. And obviously, D. Winters, we're not going to have to worry about any targeting fouls, keeping him out for this game. So Shad Banks earned some valuable experience, and I think the Frogs are going to come out and make a little bit of a statement in this rivalry game.
I would love to see it. Elsewhere in the Big 12, we've got Kansas State on the road in West Virginia, Texas on the road at Kansas. They're a 9.5-point favorite against the Jayhawks. Texas Tech at Iowa State, and Oklahoma State at Oklahoma in Bedlam. None of these have the head-to-heads of the teams still vying for the Big 12 championship. So, this could go down to another week of wondering how this is going to shake out. But do you see all these favorites running the table here, or who's coming out and stealing a win?
You know what? I look at this and I feel like Oklahoma State is a huge wild card to me because they've had 3 different quarterbacks play in each of the last 3 games. I haven't read up on what the game plan is going to be for Oklahoma, if it's going to be Spencer Sanders or Gunnar Gundy or whoever. Oklahoma is kind of in uncharted territory here, and I think this game could go either way. I have no idea what to expect from that game, and you just had West Virginia play spoiler again. I think with that game being in Morgantown, Kansas State could be on upset alert, as Paul Feinbaum would say. I think that's honestly a potential upset game there, just given how tough it is to play there and to win games. And Kansas, I'm always going to root for, just because it's the feel-good team. I say it every week.
Especially against the Longhorns.
Especially against the Longhorns. And then Iowa State, again, another week of losing by less than 7 points. If Iowa State could just get out of its own way for 1 week, I think they could win pretty handily against Texas Tech. But it's just the interceptions. They had 5 turnovers against Oklahoma State, and it's just, you can't win football games that way. And maybe this will be the week. I don't know. We will find out.
I'm going to encourage them to continue getting in their own way at least next week. They can stay out of the way this week. Next week, just go ahead and trip over your own feet. Throw the ball to the team in purple. That's going to be great. Yep. Okay, so I think that closes it for football for the week. We have to talk about basketball. Let's go ahead and talk about some good of the basketball. TCU did win last Friday since our last recording, 77-66 over Lamar, where a game where Mike Miles put the team on his back and basically was the offense, scoring 26 points, hitting 3 3-pointers. Iman Miller got involved with 12 points, and really the rest of the team contributed, but that was the main piece of it. I think this one was also too close for comfort that TCU ended up running away with it. And when it gets too close for comfort and you don't have the preseason Big 12 player of the year, things can get worse. So the following game this week was against Northwestern State. Russ, what happened? What happened against Northwestern State for this TCU basketball team?
Sag, that happened. The Frogs came out and could not hit the broadside of a barn with the basketball if they tried. They shot 2 for 21 from 3-point range in the game. Their 3-point percentage now on the season is about 19%. Mike Miles did not play because of the injury that he sustained late in that game against Lamar. Damion Baugh, of course, still out with that suspension. We will talk about that in a little bit. We have a little more clarity on that and how soon he will be returning. So that will be good news for TCU. But I think regardless, even with those two players out, there should be enough talent on this team to win a home game against Northwestern State. Chuck O'Bannon was kind of the go-to scorer for the Frogs in this game, but he really struggled. He was 3 of 14 from the field, 1 of 7 from 3. Had a really good look, actually, from beyond the arc to potentially win the game and just miss the shot. Eddie Lampkin had 11 rebounds, but wasn't much of a factor offensively. Jamie Dixon said that he's been battling an illness, so again, not trying to make excuses, but hopefully he gets that taken care of and gets back to 100%. Micah Peavy started in this game. He had 10 points. But the Frogs right now, the theme is this team just can't shoot. This team cannot shoot. 39% overall field goal percentage from the field from these first 3 games. Shooting about 69% from the free throw line. Nice. But you're not going to win many games with those kind of numbers. And again, 19% from 3-point range. It's brutal. And I know the Frogs are a team that they're not built necessarily to play really fast and run the score up and shoot the ball, shoot lights out, but you got to have at least 1 or 2 guys that consistently knock down perimeter shots. And Jacoby Coles hasn't done that. Micah Peavy's not really much of a shooter. Shahada Wells is getting his opportunity, still trying to find some consistency there. Rondell Walker, the transfer from Oklahoma State, has been a complete non-factor, to be honest. And so
not an offensive, and he wasn't really expected. That wasn't the intention for him coming in to be an offensive factor. And part of that with the situation here early in the season, he's had to play more than probably was expected of him. He comes off the bench and is a defensive stopper. Instead, he's had to come out there and be a participant in the offense, and that has not worked.
Yeah, it's been
and the defense has really just been terrible all around. I mean, the offense has been bad, shooting abysmal, but have also been a sieve defensively. I mean, I think Shahada Wells has been the kind of gotten the brunt of the feedback on this. Of man, I don't know that he's getting many stops anywhere defensively, but really the whole defense has had big struggles. I mean, these are TCU basketball set up this schedule that opened the season with some of the worst teams in all of college basketball. And part of the intention is, look, when you play in the Big 12, you're playing this gauntlet of a schedule where at the end of the day, you're going to have all these massive games to contribute to your resume. So you want to kind of ease into the season. It's a fair theory, except when you lose one of those games, this is going to be a huge black mark on the resume down the line. I mean, this is almost guaranteed to be a quad 4 loss home to a team this bad. It's going to be held against the Frogs when, if TCU even gets back to the point of being in the bubble race or for seeding conversations, it's going to be, you can't get rid of it. It won't be able to wipe away this bad loss. But playing all these bad teams, they're getting buckets on the Frogs. I mean, they're getting to the hoop. They're hitting all their shots. It feels like nothing's working really on either end of the court right now. We can move into Damion Baugh, where so it was reported and announced that the suspension will officially be 6 games for his signing with the unapproved agent when he kind of put his name in the ring for the NBA draft back last offseason. So that will put him back for the game in the Big 12 Big East Challenge against Providence on November 30th here in Fort Worth. So 3 more games without Damion Baugh, and we'll see what the Frogs are able to do as they go into this week, and then with the Emerald Classic coming up during the Thanksgiving week, whether TCU is able to get wins out of those games. But with Ball returning, I'm still concerned about what this team has shown. Obviously, he adds a dynamic playmaker. He's good on both ends of the court, and he can also make shots. So all of those things are TCU has not displayed while he's been absent. But the support around Miles and Ball and really Emmanuel Miller as well is just going to really have to step up if TCU is going to reach anything close to its ceiling.
Yeah, I think Damion Baugh will. You mentioned the defense, and the TCU backcourt over these first 3 games has gotten torched defensively. I think in the Northwestern State game, the Demons, their starting backcourt combined, I want to say, scored about 44, 45 points. It was a tough scene for the Frogs, but I think Damion Baugh is going to be huge for the Frogs offensively just because he will be their primary facilitator. The ball movement at times has been really bad for TCU over these first few games. I want to say in the first half against Northwestern State, they only had 3 assists, 3 or 4 assists. And that's just, when you don't have that many dynamic isolation type scorers, having that few assists is just not going to cut it. So having his presence back in the lineup will be significant in that regard. He will definitely help out with rebounding. You look at his numbers last year, over 10 points, 4.5 assists, 4.5 rebounds a game. He'll help out on the defensive end, I think, as well, just tightening up things in the backcourt a little bit. But like you said, Damion Baugh can score, but he's not much of a shooter, himself, at least from the perimeter. So it's going to come down to a Shahada Wells or a Jacoby Coles or even a Micah Peavy to start being a consistent threat from the perimeter. I think Chuck O'Bannon will find his shooting stroke again. He's proven that he can be a good shooter. He has the experience to be able to bounce back, so not a huge concern with him, but it might seem like a little thing, but you lose Francisco Farabello to the transfer portal. He was a career 40+% three-point shooter, even though he might have only given you a couple buckets. That's still a perimeter shooting threat that you lost and replaced with a guy in Rondell Walker who has given you basically 0 on that end. And still a lot of basketball to play. Obviously, so much to come for TCU, but it starts with Louisiana Monroe Thursday night. Hopefully, we start to see some more chemistry and improvement on that side of the ball.
Absolutely. Elsewhere in TCU sports, the TCU soccer continued its NCAA tournament run, so winning its first round matchup against UTSA 3-1 at home, and moves on to the round of 32, which will be played on site at Notre Dame in South Bend, Indiana. Game will be against Michigan State, who won its opening round after trailing early, but is one of the top teams in the country. I think they came into the tournament. They're the 4 seed here, but were like number 6 in the ranking overall. So a very strong Spartan squad that TCU will be taking on Friday afternoon. So tune into that on your ESPN Plus. TCU soccer was really impressive in that first round game. really moving the ball and putting things into play. Brenna Brossom got her first career goal. Gracie Bryan had one deflect off a defender, and Messiah Bright also smashed one in. So a good all-around performance from them, and hopefully can keep it up against a really, really strong Michigan State squad. And TCU Volleyball, Russ, what do we got there?
Yeah, we got TCU Volleyball on the podcast for the first time, I believe, this year, but for a deserving reason. The Frogs taking down number 10 Baylor 3-1 to move to 8-5 in the Big 12. And actually, just this evening, about an hour or so ago, the Frogs also beat West Virginia in a 5-set match, 3-2, to move to 9-5 in the conference with, I think, 2 or 3 matches remaining. The Frogs have clinched a top 4 finish in the conference and a winning record in the conference for only the second time in 11 years. So a really impressive accomplishment for a rebuilding volleyball program under head coach Jason Williams. Just some notable stats from the big upset over Baylor, which was also the first win over a top 25 team for TCU Volleyball in 6 years. So also a really historic achievement for this program. Audrey Knowles had 22 kills to lead the offense in this match. She also had 4 blocks. Julia Adams with 10 kills and 2 aces. Zoe Hall and Jalen Gibson, both with some big defensive plays. They combined for 9 blocks in the match, along with 17 kills. So the Frogs trending in the right direction in volleyball, playing some really good opponents and coming away with wins as they hit the home stretch here in the Big 12 schedule, and looking to see a really strong finish and to see this program really begin to flourish. When I was at TCU from, I believe, 2012, 2016, I don't think there was a lot of success there in volleyball. And granted, you had some really good individual players come through. Refreshing to see the Frogs not only in beach volleyball recently, but indoor on the court getting it done as well. Hoping the best for the Lady Frogs down the stretch here over these last few matches.
Yeah, another program with a first-year coach for the Frogs coming in and really picking up the level of play for the Horned Frog program. So great to see. And I think that's all for us. We're excited for this big football game on Saturday in Waco. And of course, come follow us on Twitter at Frogs of War. Catch us on YouTube, on Facebook, everywhere you get podcasts. Thank you for listening. Thank you for following us, and read everything that we're working on over at frogsofwar.com. And enter the conversation with us during the game threads. Get your all release of all the things you want to say. It's a fun time hanging out with the fans there, talking about the game as it's happening. And anything else, Russ? What do we got?
Max was in. That's what I got.
Go Frogs.
Bring the energy to the toilet bowl this weekend, and let's come back next week and talk about a 11-0 TCU Horned Frog football team.
Let's get it. Go Frogs.